and my whiteboard. There we are. My whiteboard. Move a little bit more. There we are. Oh, there we are. Okay, so chapter 9. So in chapter 8, we looked at all the different groups of consumers and the amount of money they're willing to spend. We had C plus I plus G plus net experts, okay? Where the right-hand side represent the total demand shown or exercised by the entire economy. The left-hand side is the total supply. So we can rewrite this relatively lengthy expression into a simple definition of the equilibrium, right? Quantity supplied equals quantity demanded, the equilibrium condition. All right, the equilibrium condition. Going back to our expression that we learned in chapter 8, the right-hand side shows us all different type of consumers: household and their spending, businesses and their spending, government and their spending, and our trade account balance, okay? So all these different types of consumers exercising their preferences, their demand, and when combined all together throughout the entire economy, they represent total demand for goods and services. And we can simply say it's quantity demanded by everyone in the country, including foreign consumers. Okay? All right. Now we would like to see that a market for one good or a service, just like the market for the entire economy, is an equilibrium. We would like to see quantity demanded matched by quantity supplied. Okay, remember that specific special equilibrium condition. If this is the case, if we are at the equilibrium, then every single unit of every single good or service produced will be bought and consumed. There will be no extra units of left unwanted. There will be no shortage. We will not have consumers going home unhappy because they failed to acquire the good in need, right? So this is what we strive to achieve, to be at the equilibrium, right? We would like to see that at any given point in time, that the entire country-wide equilibrium is present. But as you can see, this is a simple equality. This is not a triple equality like we had for the identity. What does it mean? And being that this is quantity supplied and this is quantity demanded, you know what sometimes happens to a market for a single good? Sometimes there is a shortage or sometimes there is a surplus, okay? Exactly the same happens to the entire economy. Okay? And that's exactly what we're going to look at in chapter 9, at least today. Okay, so this is the condition we would love to have any day, where everything that is produced being consumed, no shortage, no surplus. But once in a while, through shocks to the economy, this equilibrium disappears, and we could have a condition for the entire economy where total output, which is Y, or aggregate supply, or quantity supplied overall for the economy, exceeds exceeds total demand. Okay, all right. Y as a total output, total production exceeds the number of units, goods and services that's being demanded, right? Where does it take us? Well, here's an example, okay? Let's have a mental picture so we could better understand where this condition leads us. When total output exceeds total demand, it means the following. Let's say you're managing a department store, okay? Something like Walmart. If conditions like this apply, you will see people coming inside the store, looking around, checking out the shelves, checking out the produce aisle, checking out clothes, checking out other goods, checking out, but not buying anything and walking out. Okay, right? For some reason, your customers are not finding it exciting or appealing to buy goods. They walk in, they look around, they walk out empty-handed. Not because they don't want to, there is nothing to incite them to buy the stuff, right? It happens today, it happens tomorrow, happens the day after tomorrow, a week from now, okay? Usually what you see on the floor, you see the movement of merchandise from the back room, your additional storage, to the front room, where all the customers are walking in and selecting the goods and services, right? But under these conditions, there is no movement from the back room, additional storage, to the front room, because the merchandise from the front room is just not being bought. Okay. Additional supply of goods from the back room is not moving into the front room. Okay, all right? But you need this movement from the back room to the front room because your new shipment of goods are coming, okay? If you don't make space in the back room, you will have no place for the newly arrived goods, newly shipped goods to place in, right? So if this condition persists, what you will see is your back room where you hold additional inventories keep growing. Backroom supply is growing, okay? Growing and growing and growing and growing to such extent that when another new shipment of goods and services comes in, you have no room to put it in, right? So you call your supplier and tell them, listen, I don't need a new shipment, okay? You keep the goods at the warehouse or wherever else you want to, just don't send them. And the supplier will say, well, listen, we're on a schedule. We are on a agreed schedule. If you can't sell the goods, that's your problem. Make the people buy your stuff, right? So it all comes back to either store owner or store manager. How do I, as a store manager, make you guys want to come and buy my stuff? What incentive I can possibly offer you? How can I, as store manager, make you, consumers, buy my stuff? What incentive I could offer? What do you think?
Cheaper items
Yes,
or get one.
exactly, very good. Just drop the price. Excellent. drop the price or offer a special. How many times we go through a store and we either hear on their on the speakerphone or read in a flyer, buy one, get one free, right? Buy two, get third at half price or at the third price, right? All the time. Why are the store doing that? They're trying to empty the front room so they can keep moving the merchandise from the back room to the front room because the new shipment is keep coming in, okay? So as a store manager, someone who is responsible for moving that merchandise, I'm going to reduce the prices on current goods and services to make it more appealing. After all, for consumers, there is only one incentive. Remember, the cheaper, the better. Okay. The reason we didn't like these goods yesterday because they were too expensive. But today, buy one, get one free, right? Okay. So look what happens. As price on offered for sale merchandise drops, okay, producers will not like that because that will reduce their profit. So they're gonna start dropping their production. But consumers, on the other hand, will like that very much, okay? Okay, you're coming back home and you're telling your roommate or a friend, hey, the store is running such a great special. You buy one, get one free. So I bought 4 of them. Why don't you go do that too? You see what happens? A drop in price will support increasing demand, but will push the output down. So let us look at the original expression, right? Okay, as price drops, and it's not gonna be like half of the price. Like you were looking at the pair of shoes at $100 and now they are at $50. The price drop will be gradual, okay? So as price drops, the output, the left-hand side number is gonna shrink because at a lower price, producers will be making lower profits. But the right-hand side, the demand, will increase. The right-hand side number is going to increase. Look what happens. This number used to be too big, but now it's dropping. This number used to be too small, but now it's increasing. What does it mean? That means that price decrease will take place. Will take place until the left-hand side number matches the right-hand side number, until this inequality turns into equality. Okay, right? And the indication what should happen to the price was simply an increase in inventories. Okay, so when store managers are observing the growth of inventories in the back room, or they know that the flow of the inventory from the back room to the front is slowing down, that's a clear sign that sales are down. Something needs to be done. And that something is just a drop in price, running specials. Okay. All right. Any questions? No? Okay. Now, we could also have the reverse of the first inequality. We could have the condition when the total demand exceeds total output. Okay. Total output is below total demand. Now, an illustration. Let's go back to Walmart. When a condition like that happens, what you as a store manager or a store supervisor will see is People are running into the store, buying everything. And I mean, literally everything. Okay? By the end of the working day, you look into the front room and you see empty shelves, empty shelves. What are you going to do? Well, if it's a 24-hour store like our Walmart, okay, you shouldn't be waiting till the morning. You will be running to the back room, bringing additional merchandise from the back room, additional storage, to the front room. Okay. The very next day, the door opens, the customers are running, buy everything they see, and run out. Okay. Your task at the end of the day, go back to the additional supply room, bring more merchandise to the front room. But the next day, you will see exactly the same story. So your all last couple of weeks, all you were doing is shifting merchandise from the back room to the front room, back room to the front room. And if it happens consistently, day after day after day, what you will see is on one of the evenings when you run into the back room to bring more additional merchandise from the back room to the front room, you will see there is no merchandise. Okay, your additional supply of goods and services just evaporated, just exited through the window, disappeared. But it's not the time for the new shipment yet. We're still, what's today? Well, today is March 30th. And let's say the new shipment comes on the 5th or 6th of every month. You're still a week away from the new shipment, and your front room and your back room almost empty. Okay, first, let's document that. Additional merchandise, supply of goods is flying, and we can just, is flying from the back room to the front room, day after day after day. Pretty much soon, leaving you with very little additional supply left in the back room. So your inventories, additional inventories just disappeared. Inventory levels just dropped. Your back room is almost empty, okay? You know that your new shipment is scheduled on April 5th, but you can't open the store and show your customers empty shelves, right? It's unthinkable. So you pick up the phone and you call your supplier and tell them, hey, listen, I know that new shipment comes in about a week. Can you speed it up? Can you send it over now, the new shipment, and then send the regular scheduled shipment on April 5th? And the supplier will tell, why would I want to do that? At the current prices, I have no incentive to work more and produce more. But how can I stop all these people from buying everything they see? How to stop consumers from buying everything from the store. What can we do? How can we make consumers stop buying everything? What do you think? A little bit louder.
Raise the prices.
Raise the price. Very good. Make it unattractive. Make it unappealing. The price must go up. Okay. So the next wave of consumers flush in, seeing much higher prices, saying, oh, but these are not the prices my friend told me you guys had yesterday. Well, that was yesterday, right? To save what's left of the merchandise and to make it till the next shipment, I'm going to increase the prices, right? So look what happens. Oh, as price increases, that will make suppliers, producers very happy. Higher price means they're making more money per every single unit of merchandise. So they said, yeah, sure. You want an additional shipment? We'll do it. We'll send you whatever scheduled. And maybe in a couple of weeks, not in a week, but in a couple of weeks, we send you another one. Okay. But for us, consumers, an increase the price is a no-no. You know how we react to higher prices. We don't like it. Okay. So the right-hand side number, the amount of goods and services we're willing to buy with higher prices is going to shrink. Okay, so let us look at the original expression. Okay, as price increases, the left-hand side number is going to start increasing. It used to be too low, but now it's going up. The right-hand side number starts dropping. It used to be too high. Now it's shrinking. And again, that price increase will take place until our inequality stops being inequality and turns into equality, until this inequality sign turns into equality. That's when the prices will stop from rising. Okay? Okay. All right. So as you can see, understanding what C, I, and G and trade presents, and understanding that it's total demand, does not guide the entire economy to the equilibrium. Okay, it does not explain what happens to the prices. But when we compare the total demand and total output, okay, the two numbers, right? Then we will see or understand why the prices are going up or going down. So clearly, these two inequalities that I showed you, okay, that creates an intense increase in inventories that must be followed by a price drop to turn this inequality into equality. The second one comes with a rapidly decreasing inventories and the follow-up of higher prices. Both conditions are not sustainable because these two conditions explain disequilibrium. Not sustainable. These two conditions both lead to a price change. Okay. The only condition that is sustainable, that's right, the equilibrium one. Okay. The only sustainable condition, and the reason we call it sustainable, because there are no forces that will either push the price up or down. That is the only sustainable condition. Sustainable in a sense that no changes will come because we have total supply matches total demand. There are no forces to push the price level up or down. No forces to push the price level up or down. Okay, that's the magic of being at the equilibrium. Okay, any questions? Anything you want me to go back to? I cannot see what you're typing because I'm sharing the screen. So you need, if you have a question, you need to unmute your mic and ask me.
So the goal is to reach the equilibrium?
Yes, very good, very good. Excellent condition, excellent observations, yes. Yes, the ultimate goal is to reach this sustainable condition, because once we're there, there will be no change in prices, no unexpected change in prices. okay? And total output will match total demand. Everybody is going to be happy. Yes, an excellent observation. Okay. Anything else? No? Okay. All right. So it is all nice and clean when we write it down, but most of the time, and what we are preparing ourselves for, when we discuss a policy, when we simulate a policy, the best way we can show a policy and see what the results are is to present it with a graph. So let us turn all this discussion into a relatively simple graph, okay? Right? I'm going to make it relatively large. Okay, so the vertical axis is real expenditure, real spending, which is C plus I plus G plus net experts. Okay, this is what we measure on the vertical axis. The horizontal one is for real output. Okay, is for real output. Okay, all right. Now, remember we just said the best way for the economy, for everyone, and that's what we're reaching to be, is the equilibrium. When total demand, which is also represented through total expenditure, equals total output. Okay, so if we draw a 45-degree line, remember we talked about it a little bit at the beginning, a 45-degree line is a ray through the origin with a slope of 1. 45-degree line, okay? 45-degree line. Every point on this line, every point, pick any point, every point on this line okay, will present the equilibrium where total output is matched by total demand, okay? How we can see that? Measure the horizontal distance. This is the output. Measure the vertical distance. This is C plus I plus G plus net experts. On a very carefully drawn 45-degree line, you find that two distances are the same. This distance is matched in number by this distance, okay? If the horizontal distance is matched by vertical distance, then the numbers that represent those distances are the same. So, and it holds for every point on the 45-degree line, every point, okay? Every point along the 45, okay, I'm gonna write it down. Every point on the 45-degree line is the equilibrium. The equilibrium point where total output is matched by total demand, okay? Okay. How many equilibrium points we could possibly have along the 45-degree line? Anybody? How many?
4.
How many?
4?
4. Can I have 5?
Yes.
Can I have 6?
So it's unlimited.
Unlimited, very good. Very good. If every point of the 45-degree line is the equilibrium and the line consists of this unlimited number of points, then we can have unlimited number of the equilibrium points. Do we need the unlimited number? No, of course we don't. We need just one. We need just one equilibrium condition that says this is where we are. Okay, all right? How do we select one out of this unlimited number? This is where this total expenditure line comes in. Okay, all right? I am going to move to the next page to draw another graph just like that, okay, but cleaner so we can work with it, right there. Okay, this is a real expenditure, and this is a real output. So that's our 45-degree line that represents unlimited number of the equilibrium points. Again, we don't need the unlimited number, we need just one, okay? All we need to do, remember the equilibrium means total demand is matched by total output, but total demand, let's see, right there. That's our total demand. In dollar term, represents how much we're willing to spend. So this is also total expenditure. Expenditure is a fancy word for spending. Our total spending, how much money the household is willing to spend, how much money businesses are willing to spend, how much money government is willing to spend, and what we're spending while trading with other countries. So C plus I plus G plus net exports is not just total demand, but also total spending. How much money we're willing to spend. Okay, so here, if the equilibrium condition states, show me your total expenditure, I'll show you what the output is like. All we need to do is we need to picture the total expenditure line. Okay, I'm going to use a green one. Here is our total expenditure line. Okay. Now the vertical intercept. Okay. Okay. All right. All right. How far up on the vertical axis should I start the total expenditure line? It depends on the value I, G, and net exports because those numbers are not determined by household. Okay, all right. Okay, right. What we know for the fact is the total expenditure line does not start at the point of origin because there is some expenditure given done by other segments of the economy. Okay. All right. Now, the slope of the total expenditure line is MPC. It says if my income increases by $1, this is how much out of this dollar I will be spending. Remember we talked about MPC? So the total expenditure line has a positive number for the intercept and it has a positive slope, okay? Why do we need this line for? Well, this line represents the total expenditure. And when this line meets the 45-degree line, the textbook calls it the Q point. That's our equilibrium point, okay? And thanks to that Q point, that's how we determine what is the current output. Current economy output, okay? All right, so combination of the 45-degree line and the total expenditure line, when the two intersect each other at point Q, okay, that point indicates the level of output that we are currently producing at, given our current expenditure. Okay. All right. Now, remember that Y also stands and, okay, think of Y as a double-sided coin, okay? One side of that coin shows us the output, how much is being produced counted in dollar terms. You flip the coin and another side shows us exactly the same number, but now it tells us this is our gross income, okay, right? Based on the national income identity. We can keep flipping the coin as we need to. So this picture with the 45-degree line and the total expenditure line is called income expenditure diagram. Let me use the red one. This picture is called income expenditure diagram. Why do we need this diagram? To find the current level of output. Why actual? We need this diagram. We need this diagram. Excuse my cat. We need this diagram to find Y actual, okay? We need this diagram to find Y actual. That's the Y that's indicated through the intersection of total expenditure line and the 45-degree line, okay? Right? Right? Any questions? I'm just going to give you a quick glance forward into chapters, let's see, into chapters 10, 11, 12, and 13, okay? Besides, what happens when my cat sits on the keyboard of the laptop? Everything goes blank. So if it does, I'll try to keep her away. Real expenditure. She really doesn't want to go away. So here is our income expenditure diagram, okay? You can always tell that it's an income expenditure diagram when you see the 45-degree line. This is our total expenditure line, okay? All right, so income, expenditure, diagram, all right? The intersection of the 45-degree line and the total expenditure line give us the actual GDP level, okay? But when we simulate a policy, okay, we take this level down, actual, and that's how we find the level GDP we're working with currently, okay? We usually select a price level at random, and then we bring the aggregate demand and aggregate supply, almost right here, okay? But that's for future references, okay? Just to show you, and this is, okay? Just to show you why do we need the income expenditure diagram. First, and the most important, to find the actual GDP level where the economy is currently producing at, and then take this level down and find the equilibrium for the aggregate demand, aggregate supply diagram, okay? Okay, right? Any questions? We're not going to use the aggregate demand, aggregate supply diagram in this chapter. We're just going to work with income expenditure diagram, okay? If you don't have questions, I am going to draw another one and income expenditure diagram, real expenditure, the 45-degree line, and the total expenditure line, C plus I plus G plus net experts, okay? ACT, okay, let me put it this way. ACT stands for actual output. Actual as to, this is how much we're actually producing given the current economic conditions, okay? So as you can see, the actual output is a combination of the 45-degree line and the total expenditure line. And it means we are at the equilibrium, right? Because that's what we have. Total expenditure is matched by total output. But knowing the economy at the equilibrium does not solve all the problems. Sometimes we are at the equilibrium, but we have high unemployment. Or sometimes we're at the equilibrium, but have high inflation. Okay, so something else is missing. Something else is missing in this picture to show us where we currently are, what needs to be done to make it better, and does it need to be better? Okay, what we need to bring in. Remember we talked about potential GDP, potential output, how much of the output we could produce if we use all our resources at full. And the major resource that we always discuss that concerns us immediately is the labor force. Okay, full employment. Okay, so there is actual GDP and actual usage of labor force, and there is a potential GDP and full employment that produces potential GDP. Okay, potential GDP usually is represented by a vertical solid line. Vertical solid line. Vertical line because it does not depend on the expenditure. Think about potential. We could produce that much if we use all our workers. It has nothing to do with spending. It has everything to do with the potential of using every worker appropriately and all the equipment. Okay, that's why it's a vertical line, right? So sometimes the actual GDP falls short of potential. And when we place the potential, it is to the right of actual, okay? Right? Here is an important fact that I hope you will remember. You see the difference between the two lines? The actual GDP is indicated by a dotted line, whereas potential is a solid line, okay? Why? Because potential doesn't change overnight. Potential is based on the full usage of labor force, and the size of labor force does not change in the short run, but actual GDP could, right? So if actual GDP is below potential, just like as our picture indicates, okay, the distance between the two will be called a gap, okay? Gap is the distance between actual and potential GDP levels, okay? A gap. Now, if actual GDP is below potential, that means actual usage of labor force is below full employment. Okay, what does it mean? Yes, that means we are facing high unemployment rate. There are too many people on the street without a job. High unemployment rate. So, under this condition, a policy must be developed and implemented to close the gap and eliminate high unemployment. When we're looking at the gap like that, for conditions when actual GDP is below potential, this gap will be called a recessionary gap. A recessionary gap. Okay. All right. The actual GDP is shrinking away from potential, releasing more and more workers from their workforces. Okay. All right. Any questions? No? Okay. Another condition, real expenditure, real GDP. That's our 45-degree line. And here's our total expenditure line. Okay. And our dotted line indicating actual GDP. Another condition is when potential GDP is located to the left of actual. Okay. Again, the distance between the two will be called a gap. The distance between actual GDP and potential is called a gap. Okay, but this time this gap is different from a recessionary gap, right? If actual GDP exceeds potential, then the usage of labor force exceeds full employment. Actual use, full employment. Okay. How could this possibly be done? When people are taking on a second job or a third job, all of a sudden one person shows up on several payrolls. Okay, right? That's how we can have, let's say, if there is 100 people in a workforce, that's how when people take on a second or a third job, that's how we can have 110 or 115 or 120 people on payrolls. Okay, so obviously, if people are taking on a second or third job, there is no lack of job offerings, right? So we do not have a problem with unemployment. That's relieving to know that, right? What do we have then? Well, think of all the extra money earned. There is nothing wrong to work as much as you can if you physically can, if your body can physically afford it, that's fine. But earning so much, we will be spending more, right? Going more often to the store, buying 2 or 3 boxes of cereal instead of 1, driving all the demand curves to the right increasing the price. Overworking leads to overspending, and overspending always drives the prices up. Okay? Okay. And continuous increase in prices is called inflation. So this type of gap will be called an inflationary gap. An inflationary gap. Okay? All right? Okay? So let's move to a very important conclusion. Okay? I'm going to move to a new page. If when actual GDP falls below potential is bad, leads to high unemployment rate. If actual GDP exceeds potential, that leads to continuous increase in prices, inflation. What would be an ideal condition for the economy, for actual versus potential, when we don't have any problems with unemployment or inflation? What would be the ideal condition? What do you think? Okay. What kind of sign between these two numbers would be ideal?
If they're equal.
Yes, very good, very good. If the actual GDP falls on potential, okay, very good, excellent. Real GDP, and this is a real expenditure. That's our 45-degree line. That's our total expenditure line. Okay, this is our actual GDP. I'm going to use a different color. And, well, let's see, purple. Well, I'm not sure if you can see purple or not. Okay. Okay. Right? The optimal condition. The optimal means the best. The optimal condition for any economy if when the actual GDP matches potential. If this is the case, we're not facing an unemployment problems and we're not facing an inflation problems. We're producing just the right amount needed to satisfy the needs of the population. Okay. So where does it lead us? It leads us to a very important conclusion. Okay. On a monthly basis, the government and the central bank compare actual GDP and potential GDP on monthly basis, okay, to see how close they are or how far apart they are, right? And when there is a gap beginning to open, if there is a gap beginning to open, either then the policymakers will design a policy and implement a policy to close the gap. Okay, that's where we're going with all of this. As you can see, either gap is bad, either unemployment or inflation. Okay, what we need the two GDPs, actual and potential, to merge, to be the same number or as close as possible. Okay, and that's what the goal of any policy developed either by fiscal authorities or monetary authorities. Okay. Any questions? We're going to stop right now for chapter 9. Okay. Are there any questions? No? Okay. All right. I'm going